This is a Fisher FVH-P450S VHS deck with hi-fi. Despite being hi-fi, this is a two-head deck, so it's somewhat basic. The front buttons are hidden under this panel, which you push to open. Unfortunately, it's slightly broken on the left side, so it's a bit floppy. You have your pretty standard controls on the front. Additionally, there's a headphone socket there with the volume. And then you have a sharpness. And of course your normal control, tracking and fine-tuning, and channel select, and finally switch to turn on and off NICAM reception. On the back we have an antenna input and output for the RF modulator, a button to turn off a test signal to tune to if using RF out, and channel select. There's a single scarf pot and audio in and output, and then an adjustment for a still picture in case it's jumping. It's made in Japan. Fisher was originally a United States-based manufacturer of radios and receivers. Sanyo bought the name and company sometime in the 70s, and the lead engineer of Fisher stayed on, from what I can read. And then later on it was used as Sanyo's kind of premium brand. Now the first thing I discovered when turning it off was that the video head drum seemed to be a bit stuck. Just moving it by hand seemed to fix that though. After the deck actually got going, this started happening. Yeah, that's literally a... I don't know what part would have failed first, but there's a diode here that was shorted, which obviously caused reverse voltage over that capacitor that was smoking. I also swapped the other diode since it was the same type, just in case. Over here on the main board where the power comes in, as you can see, I put a resistor here. I swapped the one that was there originally, which was under the board. This was a resistor I took out. It's a fusible resistor that goes open over some current limit. I just put in a normal one for now, but it should probably be fine as long as it's one that's designed to not like go up in flames if it gets overcharged. There's also a fuse on the same line, the one that sits here, so I could just take that out. Once I've replaced that and the capacitors, things worked fine again. Before that the display was flashing like crazy. The other function worked fine, as that line was only used for display, I think, and tuner. And I ended up just swapping all of the caps, because some of them other ones were kind of bad as well, especially this 1000 UF one. This stuff here isn't corrosion, I think it's just glue, but this one measured really bad, and some of the other ones weren't too great either. It uses a old school linear power supply, which was pretty good when it came to noise, but they're not very power efficient, and they're also really heavy due to the big transformer needed. And you have the main PCB, and then underneath there's a some additional PCBs. And then for the mechanism, so it's called the Sanyo P90 mechanism in service manuals, and it later got revised a bit on some of the newer decks. There's a shield plate covering a lot of it, so I'm gonna take that off to better show it. A lot of it is made from like stamped sheet metal, it looks like, including the cassette carriage. It's the type of mechanism where the cassette goes over the capstan when it's put in, and then the pinch roller is just moved towards it. Many other mechanisms at this time had the pinch roller that would drop down and push the other way. You can also see we have a tape stabilizer, and then the video head here with 2 hi-fi and 2 normal heads. When I first got this VCR, it had some issues. One of them was just trouble loading the tape. It turned out that the loading belt here had gone loose and bad, so I had to replace it. And it was a pretty huge pain to actually get it in without disassembling everything, which would also have been a huge pain. Now to look at the underside of the mechanism, we have to remove this huge metal plate and the legs, which are sort of pushed in. When I did some testing earlier, it seemed that the drive belt was also being a bit loose, so I was gonna see if it actually needed replacement. To completely get the belt off, I need to remove this retainer. The belt isn't completely shot, but it's a bit hard and cracked, it looks like, so I'm gonna put in a new one. As I was trying to demonstrate the mechanism, it started acting up and not wanting to load and play properly. I'm not sure if it was something inherent to it, or I did find I lost a screw, which could have blocked something, I don't know, but I'm gonna have to disassemble it more to find out what's going on. Now I've already taken off the front and the head-amp stuff, and to get access to the switches where the problem seems to be, I need to the manual states that I need to remove the carriage first and then remove the screws to take off the bit with the motor on it. With these parts I took the opportunity to also clean the mode switch a bit. This thing, the top gear does pop off, but you should be a bit careful so you don't break any of the pins that hold it in, which are on the inside. This top bit of the mechanism is what drives the cassette carriage, and there's the gear that sits here, and then there's a worm gear here, and you can see there's a notch and a pin here, and this thing kicks the gear so that the worm gear here will turn it, and when it's loaded it sits like this so the worm gear doesn't contact it. And then the lower side is what drives the rest of the mechanism, including the mode switch here, through this thing here, and it's transferred via this belt. Now I did notice that there's a slight crack in this lower gear here. This sort of thing is something that can go in some other mechanisms, a worm gear on a metal fin. Like you can get this or this cracking and not gripping onto it properly, but for now it seems to be fine. So I'm gonna leave it as is. I don't know what the exact issue is, but I'm gonna try with a slightly smaller belt. And if that doesn't work, I'm gonna try with a belt from newer Sanyo that I know works, even though the belt's probably not totally 100%. You can see the mechanism moves freely, so this part seems to be working okay. One thing I noticed when reassembling this is that this metal piece here seemed to have jumped up a bit and wasn't sitting flush. So I don't know if it happened when I took it apart, or if that was causing it to not go between modes correctly. After much finagling and stress, I finally got everything put together and functioning again. I don't know if it was the metal piece that had popped off, or if something had gone out of alignment, or if it was the mode switch or belt or something else, but it's working again now, so at least that's it. So to demonstrate the mechanism properly this time. Now the pause function. It doesn't instantly stop, it like skips a few frames. I don't know why it does that, but, or if it, I don't know why it does that, or if it's supposed to, or how that is. And then finally going into standby. I also have the remote control. Sadly, I haven't gotten it to work. I swapped the two electrolytic capacitors, at least one of which seemed to be bad, and I also tried swapping the crystal, but it still seems to be dead. If we put in a SP tape, it starts playing like normal with hi-fi and all. With the LP recording there is no video, and right now it's even just playing the linear audio track, but if I adjust the tracking a little bit, you can see well, it's probably doesn't show up well on camera, but there's hi-fi lights that light up when it's playing hi-fi tracks. Similarly, it lets you record audio in LP mode, but not the video. So if you play back on another VCR, you'll also just get audio. Lastly, to demonstrate the output a bit, as noted earlier, I'm not sure if the pause function behaves quite as it's supposed to be. It takes like a few frames to settle in, and skipping to the next field also seems to not move the right distance. Since this is a deck with 2 video heads only, the pause and seeking isn't going to look all that good. And also, as noted earlier, the sharpness of the image output can be adjusted with the sharpness knob on the machine.
Insight we have as to how he saw his painting.
The tragic I can't point it out. That I communicate those basic emotions.